How desperate was the Union Army for soldiers during the Civil War? Desperate enough that President Abraham Lincoln eventually called for hundreds of thousands of volunteers. Yet, in 1861, when Native American leaders offered to raise entire companies of warriors for the Union, they were turned away. Not because they lacked courage, and not because they lacked military experience, but because many government officials still viewed them as savages. Ironically, only 2 years later, those same Native American soldiers would become some of the Union Army's most respected fighters. This is the forgotten story of the Native Americans the Union refused. Long before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, Native Americans had already established a long tradition of military service in America's wars. They had fought during the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War. Many tribes believed that loyal military service might finally earn respect, protect their lands, or strengthen relationships with the federal government. So when the Civil War erupted in April 1861, Native leaders once again stepped forward. In Michigan, Ojibwa missionary George Copway offered to recruit a company of Native warriors for Union service. He described them as young men accustomed to hardship, swift as deer, cautious, disciplined, and perfectly suited for military duty. At nearly the same time, Chief Holden the Day in neighboring Minnesota offered to raise more than 100 Ojibwa warriors. Both expected their offers would be welcomed. Instead, they were rejected. The rejection had nothing to do with military ability. It had everything to do with prejudice. Secretary of War Simon Cameron acknowledged the enthusiasm of Native Americans to defend the Union, but responded that, quote, the nature of our present national troubles forbids the use of savages, end quote. It was a devastating response. The irony was striking. The same government that had relied on Native warriors in previous conflicts now declared them unfit to defend the nation during its greatest crisis. As casualties mounted and the war expanded, however, practical necessity began to outweigh prejudice. As casualties mounted and the war expanded, however, practical necessity began to outweigh prejudice. The Emancipation Proclamation and evolving federal policy opened the door for more non-white enlistments. Native Americans who had once been rejected were finally allowed to serve, and in Michigan, many joined Company K of the 1st Michigan Sharpshooters, the largest all-Native American company in the Union Army's Eastern Theater. Their marksmanship, discipline, and battlefield performance quickly earned respect from fellow soldiers. The story didn't end with acceptance. These Native soldiers went on to fight in some of the Civil War's hardest campaigns. For many, military service represented more than patriotism. It was a chance to protect their communities, demonstrate loyalty, and perhaps convince the federal government to honor its promises. Too often, those hopes went unfulfilled. Yet their service remains undeniable. The irony is impossible to ignore. The Union initially rejected Native American volunteers because of stereotypes. Then, once allowed to serve, many proved themselves to be among its finest soldiers. History is full of forgotten stories. This is one of them. When we think about the Civil War, we often picture blue and gray armies clashing across famous battlefields. But hidden behind those familiar stories are thousands of Native American men who volunteered to fight for a nation that had repeatedly broken its promises to their people. Their story reminds us that history is rarely simple. It is often complicated, unexpected, and deeply human. History matters because people matter. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's story, I'd really appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe to HMS History with Michael Stroud. Those simple actions make a tremendous difference in helping YouTube recommend those often overlooked stories to more people who love history. If you'd like even more, be sure to visit michaelgstroud.com, where you can subscribe to the HMS Monthly Dispatch, my free monthly newsletter featuring behind-the-scenes research, upcoming projects, and exclusive historical insights. Until next time, history matters because people matter.